Welcome back to the government report. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of explosions echoing across your entire city. Rockets screaming through the sky, drones slamming into buildings, emergency sirens blaring everywhere. This isn't a nightmare or a movie scene. This is what happened in Kiev on the night of November 13th, 2025, when Russia unleashed something absolutely terrifying. 430 drones and 18 missiles in a single coordinated attack. That's not a typo. 430 drones in one night. And here's the thing that's even more shocking. This wasn't a one-off event. This has become Russia's new playbook. Wave after wave of strikes, each one more devastating than the last. But why? Why would Russia throw this many weapons at a city in a single night? What's the strategy? And how is Ukraine even surviving these attacks? Let's find out. The night it all happened. Let's rewind to November 13th, 2025. It's just before midnight in Kiev. Most people are getting ready for bed or already asleep. Then everything changes in an instant. At around 12:45 a.m. local time, the first explosions started lighting up the capital. But these aren't random strikes. This is coordinated chaos. Russia sent over 430 drones and 18 ballistic and aeroballistic missiles directly at Kiev and surrounding regions. Think about that number for a second. 430 drones are enough to overwhelm any air defense system, and that's exactly what Russia was counting on. President Zelensky called it a wicked attack and described it as deliberately calculated to cause maximum harm to civilians and infrastructure. The numbers he quoted were brutal. 430 drones, 18 missiles, waves of explosions that didn't stop for hours. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported that the city was experiencing a massive assault, with high-rise buildings being hit in almost every single district. The real problem? Ukrainian air defenses managed to shoot down about 405 drones and 14 missiles. On paper, that sounds good. They stopped most of the attack. But here's the issue. With that many incoming targets, even stopping 95% isn't enough. The remaining drones and missiles got through and hit their targets. Buildings were damaged, fires broke out, and people died. At least 7 people were confirmed dead, and dozens more were wounded, including children and a pregnant woman. What made this strike particularly devastating was the targets. Russia wasn't just hitting random locations. They were going after energy infrastructure, critical utilities, and yes, civilian areas too. Falling debris from intercepted missiles damaged water pipelines and power distribution networks. One thermal power plant in Kiev Oblast was damaged just from falling missile debris. The coordinated nature of this attack showed something really important. Russia has learned from its previous strikes. They're getting smarter about how they execute these massive barrages. Iran's gift to Russia's war. Now let's talk about what Russia actually used that night, the Shahed drone. If you want to understand this war, you have to understand this weapon. The Shahed isn't Russian, it's Iranian, but Russia has essentially adopted it and made it its favorite tool for destroying Ukraine. The drone is basically a flying bomb, technically called a loitering munition or kamikaze drone. It's cheap to produce, relatively effective, and can swarm targets in overwhelming numbers. That's the whole strategy right there. Here's where it gets really interesting. Russia didn't just buy a few Shaheds from Iran and call it a day. They started manufacturing them domestically, making modifications and improvements. The name changed to Jiran 2 in Russian service, but it's the same weapon. And over time, Russia has been tweaking the design to make it more effective. They've added tungsten balls to increase shrapnel damage. They're experimenting with lacing components with toxic agents to maximize harm. And they've developed an upgraded version called the Shahed 238 that's even harder to jam or intercept. The production numbers are genuinely terrifying. According to Ukrainian military intelligence, Russia can produce up to 2,700 Shahed-type drones every single month. Every month. That's not an estimate or a guess. That's based on actual intelligence assessments. And Russia didn't just build this capability overnight. They spent months investing in facilities like the Alabuga Special Economic Zone in Tatarstan. Now here's the kicker. Russia is even planning to bring in North Korean workers to ramp production even higher. We're talking about 12,000 North Korean workers earning $2.50 an hour, working 12-hour shifts to build more Shahed drones. By the end of 2025, Russia aims to produce at least 30,000 Shahed-type drones in total. But that's not even the whole picture. Russia is also producing other types of attack drones, the Garpia 3 drones that China is manufacturing for them with ranges of over 2,000 kilometers. They're testing jet-powered variants like the Garand 3 that can travel at insane speeds and are almost impossible to intercept. This isn't about random drone attacks anymore. This is about the systematic production and deployment of weapons designed to break Ukraine's defenses through sheer overwhelming volume. Saturation attacks. So why use 430 drones in one night? What's the actual military objective here? To understand that, you have to understand the concept of saturation attacks. The basic idea is simple but brutal. Send so many weapons at once that air defenses simply can't handle them all, even if Ukraine's systems are 74% effective, and that's their own military's assessment. That leaves 26% of the weapons getting through. With 430 drones coming at you, that's over 100 weapons hitting their targets. No city can absorb that kind of punishment without serious damage. Ukraine's air defense capabilities are actually pretty impressive considering what they're facing. They have Patriot systems, they have other NATO-supplied systems, and they have Soviet-era systems they've repurposed. But here's the problem. They don't have enough of them. Ukraine has only 6 Patriot batteries for an entire country. 6. Russia can launch 400 drones in one night. The math doesn't work. This is actually a deliberate Russian strategy based on years of conflict. Back in September 2024, Russia was launching about 200 Shaheds per week. By March 2025, they ramped that up to over 1,000 per week. That's a 5-fold increase in less than 6 months. They're basically running an experiment. Can they overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses through sheer volume? And the answer so far is yes. The saturation strategy also serves a secondary purpose. Every interceptor missile that Ukraine uses to shoot down a Shahed is money out of Ukraine's pocket. Patriot missiles cost around $4 million each. A Shahed drone costs maybe $20,000 to produce. So even if Ukraine shoots down 8 Shaheds for every Patriot missile they use, they're still spending more money than Russia is. This is economic warfare disguised as a military assault. What's happening in Kiev is just one example of this strategy playing out across the entire country. Ukraine is constantly under attack, not just with drones, but with guided aerial bombs, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, everything. The Institute for the Study of War confirmed that on October 29th alone, Russia fired over 700 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles at Ukraine. That's one day. And Ukraine managed to intercept 592 drones and 21 cruise missiles that day, but not a single ballistic missile got shot down. Not one. Production capacity. Let's get into some numbers that are absolutely wild and show just how serious Russia is about this escalation. According to Ukrainian Military Intelligence Deputy Chief Vadim Skibitsky, Russia is aiming to produce 120,000 guided aerial bombs, KABS, by the end of 2025. That's not including what they've already produced. These aren't Shaheds. These are bigger, heavier weapons that can destroy entire apartment buildings. And Russia plans to make 120,000 of them in 1 year. The current use rate is already staggering. A few months ago, Russia was dropping an average of 170 guided bombs per day on Ukraine. Now they're up to 200 to 250 per day, every single day. And Skibitsky says Russia is actively testing longer-range variants, some capable of flying 200 kilometers, and they're working on versions that can reach 400 kilometers away. These new variants allegedly use jet propulsion systems, which means they're not just bigger and heavier, they're also faster and harder to intercept. On top of the guided bombs, Russia is planning to produce 70,000 drones of various types in 2025. 70,000? At least 30,000 of those are Shahed-type drones. The rest include other models like the Garpia 3 and upgraded Jiran variants. Russia can make these weapons way faster than Ukraine can shoot them down. Even if Ukraine dedicates every single air defense system they have to intercept these weapons, it literally cannot keep up with the production rate. It's mathematically impossible. But wait, there's more. Russia is also using ballistic missiles like Iskanders and Kinzhals. According to research compiled by Ukrainian analysts and confirmed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, out of 939 Iskanders and Kinzhals fired at Ukraine since 2022, only 227 have been intercepted. That's a 24% interception rate overall, but when you narrow it down to attacks specifically on Kiev and Odessa, where Patriot systems are stationed, the rate drops dramatically. In 273 out of 345 attacks involving these missiles, Ukraine didn't intercept a single one, not one. Kiev in crisis. While all these weapons are raining down, something really critical is happening to Ukraine's infrastructure, especially energy, and this matters because we're heading into winter. When Russia launched those 430 drones on November 13th, they specifically targeted energy facilities. Vitaly Zychenko, the head of Ukraine's state grid operator Ukrenergo, confirmed that Russia was hitting power plants and distribution networks. And this has been an ongoing campaign, not just a one-time thing. Over the last few months, Russia has systematically destroyed more than half of Ukraine's natural gas production capacity. They've done this through coordinated strikes on gas production facilities across Kharkiv, Poltava, and other regions. In one attack, Naftogaz, Ukraine's state energy company, said it was the most massive assault on its facilities since the war started. Russia fired 35 missiles and 60 drones in that single attack. The problem becomes critical as winter sets in. Without natural gas production, people can't heat their homes. Without power plants, there's no electricity. Ukraine has already announced plans to increase natural gas imports by 30% just to meet basic civilian needs. Basically, Russia is trying to freeze Ukraine into submission. And here's the really disturbing part. This is being done deliberately. It's not collateral damage from military strikes. These are precision attacks on civilian energy infrastructure. Ukraine's government calls it a war crime because that's what it is, targeting civilian infrastructure to cause suffering to the population. The current war situation. So, where are things right now as we hit November 23rd, 2025? The situation is looking pretty grim for Ukraine. On the front lines, Russia has been making territorial gains, especially in the Zaporizhia region. Russian forces currently control about 20% of Ukraine's territory. That's up from previous months. They're pushing toward the city of Huliaipol, which is a key logistics hub. Russian military experts predict that if Ukraine doesn't respond quickly enough to these advances, Huliaipol could be surrounded and cut off by mid-December. The situation in Pokrovsk, a major logistics hub in eastern Ukraine, is also deteriorating. Russia has been trying to capture Pokrovsk for over a year, and they're throwing serious resources at it. President Zelensky says about 170,000 Russian soldiers are pressing to seize the city. Ukraine is defending it with American Black Hawk helicopters and whatever forces they can muster, but manpower is becoming a critical issue. The underlying problem is that Russia has more soldiers, more weapons production, and more of everything compared to Ukraine. Russia announced a mobilization drive to bring in new troops to attack Pokrovsk. Meanwhile, Ukraine is struggling with manpower shortages and is having to divert troops from other areas to defend critical cities. In terms of Ukrainian counterstrikes, they're doing their best to hit back. Ukraine has been targeting Russian air defenses, systematically destroying S-400 systems and command posts in occupied Donbass. They've also been hitting Russian oil infrastructure. When Russia launched that massive attack with 430 drones, Ukraine simultaneously hit a major Russian oil depot in Novorossiysk. They used domestically produced Neptune cruise missiles and the new Flamingo missile. Ukraine's goal is to degrade Russia's military production capabilities and make it too expensive for Russia to continue the war. But Ukraine's strikes are limited compared to Russia's capability. Ukraine doesn't have massive production facilities for weapons like Russia does. They're making do with NATO support, domestically produced weapons when possible, and long-range drones launched almost every night. But it's not enough to match what Russia is throwing at them. So, what do you think? Will Ukraine be able to hold off these massive attacks, or is Russia's strategy changing the direction of the war? Comment below.